In this video, we're going to be talking about the JJK anime and comparing it to its manga counterpart. We're going to be talking about all the differences, right? These are going to be things like every scene that was not adapted from the manga and the added scenes that they've added to the anime for a little bit of extra flavor. If you think we've missed anything majorly important or just more interesting, please let us know in the Discord below. There's loads of people, loads of talented people in there discussing anime every single day, and we'd love to have you. Anyway, let's get right into the video. So straight off the bat, all the reaction images to Tengen, they're all different. Not a single one of them is like the same angle as it is in the manga. That being said, so far, we've seen a lot of close-ups, something that we didn't see in the previous episode. They, for some reason, shied away from using close-ups. And because there's going to be an unbelievable amount of exposition in this episode in a blank, empty room, I understand that they're going to make a lot of embellishments in terms of how they're going to display information and how they're going to deliver it. Also, just not the voice I thought Tengen was going to get, but it's still very good. They use the same shots, but use different information for those shots. For example, they run this sequence of panels actually backwards. The information is in the same order. It's just the panels that, display the information aren't. And in terms of the shots where they cut to one or two of our main group talking, in the manga, we do get closer up panels of, different angles from them talking. For example, the first shot of multiple people in the same group talking, we see Fujigoro and Yuji from a side profile almost perspective, but we never really see that in the anime. It's 100% just these wide angle shots of everyone and then close-ups of individuals when they talk. We're supposed to get a close-up of Tengen's emotion there because Tengen doesn't really seem to show too much emotion. This is one of the few moments that they do. So you'd think it'd be relatively important to show that Tengen is capable of making a joke and still has these human emotions. Even though they claim to be far from a human at the minute, they seem pretty human to me in everything but their appearance. See, for all these talking bits of dialogue, we get to see a far more characterized reaction from every individual. When Fujigoro says, "Excuse me," you can see that he's actually has stepped forward, because before he was standing Yuta, and now he stepped forward and raised his arm. However, in the anime, he just raises his arm, puts it back down, and there's no expression in his face whatsoever. A change in temperament. Fujigoro is usually the blank slate of a bland motherfucker as they come. So anytime he does show any form of emotion, it is relatively more important to show that than it would be for Yuji having another one of his silly moments. Which, by the way, I love. This shot of Yuji turning around to see that the entrance is slowly fading away isn't in the manga whatsoever. I believe they did it in the anime for, they need more shots because they are stuck in a very, very dialogue heavy section of the story, and they need any visual disparity to kind of break up the monotony of this scene. So for the entrance to fade away is something for us to look at and gain a bit of extra context clues as to where they are while also delivering the information is a great decision on their part, and also is less work later on for them to constantly keep adding the entrance in. Now they don't have to worry about it. They're working in a completely blank space, and we can see later in the episode why that's important from a production standpoint. Manga is amazing because it's able to use two of the strongest mediums in the world, art and narrative writing, and combine them into one. But a manga is at its best when it is working with both in tandem. When you focus far too heavily on one or the other, your narrative either is as weak as Solo Leveling's dogshit writing, or is like this, where we have infinite amounts of information being thrown at us that is all complicated and singularly important to this narrative alone. That might just sound like a whole load of jabber. But what I mean by that is that if you are studying, for example, algebra, the information that you learn from using algebra is useful to you when you are using algebra. It's not useful to you when you are riding a bike. All the buzzwords, all this information is solely important to the Jujutsu Kaisen power system, universe, and story. So if you're like me and you read quite a lot of manga and anime that are able to display and deliver their information in a far more organic way than this you can understand why a lot of the information might go over my head. This is the first example of this happening in this arc, and as I said in my previous video, there is a lot of this in this season, and it's by far the reason why the Culling Games is a slightly weaker arc in my opinion than the Shibuya incident. But this anime is anything to go off. They are adding an unbelievable amount of visual detail compared to the manga. See, although the manga lacks that visual element that manga is supposed to offer us, the anime didn't. The anime has taken full advantage of the visual and animation medium that they are working with. I'm not trying to dog on the manga. The manga is really good and better in a lot of ways than the anime, trust me. However, when it comes to delivering exposition, information in general, it is horrendously weak. As I've been talking through this point, I have put examples, information being delivered in the manga compared to the anime, and you can just see the visual difference. My only gripe with how they've displayed the information in the anime is that I can't fucking read any of this. I assume if it was all in English, I'd be well able to read it. It's just that along with reading the subtitles for what's on screen and the subtitles for the characters themselves, it honestly, as a dyslexic person, it was very hard to get all that information in, but it was much easier and more interesting than in the manga. And that's having read the manga first. But I can fully understand this approach from the manga. See, this is the exposition chapter. This is the chapter where you shoot all that information in so everyone can absorb it and understand, so that we can hit it hard in the next chapter and pick up that narrative flying through, not needing to slow down for all the exposition because it's taking part here. Now, nothing's worse than a fight stopping and starting for 5 episodes because they have to deliver exposition during the fight. Let all the information be known, then let the fight play out. Or, just the story play out. At the halfway point, there's no action whatsoever. Not even a glimpse of action, and not even a lot of characterization being developed for any of our cast apart from Tengen. I can fully understand why some people might find this episode dreary and boring. It's a necessity, and it's an issue with the source material rather than the anime itself. It's just a particularly weaker part of the story in general. This is a different angle than it is in the manga, and also Tengen is supposed to be in this shot. This is supposed to be a close-up of Tengen. Before showing the graphic of Japan, we're supposed to get a shot of our cast standing in front of Tengen as they put the Prism Realm back into the portal, and then show the graph. Even though there's no graph in front of the actual characters, it's more of a metaphorical graph. This is supposed to be a close-up, but the angle in the manga is much better. It shows where Tengen's standing, it shows Yuji, and it shows the graph that they are looking at for that extra added context that doesn't actually exist in the manga, because all the visuals that are displayed are metaphorical. Now, when they're talking about each rule of the Culling Games in the anime, they have this sort of rotating chain of the rules on these sigils, and I think it's a much better way to display it than a black panel with text. Once again, they trade the more close-up angles of characters talking for the more spread out and zoomed out layout than they go for in the anime. This is mainly because they still have to display a lot of information while the characters are talking, and leaving it on screen for a longer amount of time is something that they need to do with the anime medium. So this is a way to keep the shot's consistency while also delivering the information in a way that isn't god awful, while still, like this shot, keeping the close-ups when they can and when they don't need to deliver extra information with visuals. The anime has another anime original graphic here of the timer counting down to when Tatsumi is going to enter the Culling Games. This is a really creative way by the mangaka to break up the monotony of them being in one room for 2 chapters. They bring another character's perspective in a new scene, talking about the same material but just in a completely different context. It just so happens that this is a conversation that happened and fits in here. These characters aren't linking in and talking about this to one another. It's a really good visual and narrative way to give us this information and getting us out of this room, because almost 16 minutes into the episode, and for their first time being outside of that single room, is a godsend visually to my eyeballs. Also, the embellishment that Mappa decided to put into this scene is Chef's goddamn kiss. Although the manga layout is something not to put down whatsoever, I think it's quite an amazing manga panel too. And the actual visual for Panda, cinema. Usually it's just text in a white space. Another example of them visually giving us information and giving us a dynamic angle rather than a close-up to help translate that information in a more organic way. Once again, You can dunk on the anime all you want. These issues are from the manga. A little disappointed we don't get the full confused visual from Yuji here, but I'm very, once again, they need to give us all this information. And it's not like a manga where they can smash all this text on a page and it works out a little bit okay. In anime format, getting text on the screen is a real challenge. That's what this episode has proved to us all. But regardless, the visuals that they have delivered to us to get this information across is genuinely the best I've ever seen. Obviously, it would be ideal if they didn't do it in these massive blocks of a full episode of just information. It would be nice for them to break it up a little. One thing I really do like is, once again, they have to have all the information. Having Yuta and Itadori have this moment where they think about, well, Yuta, I need you to kill me if I get out of hand. And having Fujigoro on the side reacting to that in the same frame, in my opinion, is more accurate to the manga than adapting the manga one-to-one. Mainly because of how you read manga. You read manga, you see all the images straight away, but you only focus on parts of them later. But if you were watching this, you'd focus at the center of your screen first, the two characters and the information, then you'd look at Fujigoro because he's off to the left in this case. And wow, the Jojo crying bit is the cinema brotherhood tears, okay? But moving on to the scene in the theater, it's once again an amazing change of pace to be out of that white room and to see my goat with this sign up here that says, "Is that a banana in your pocket?" So we can tell that his sense of humor is interesting. And this scene paints Takaba as far more mentally unstable as he is in the manga, in my personal opinion, because he doesn't go through so many options in his head. He isn't bouncing between everything, all these numbers, trying to weigh what type of comedian he is. That showing of his unstable mental is not really present to that extent. It isn't that obvious in the manga. That is the last section of story we have to cover today. A lot of differences overall, and all pretty much for the positive. The music, unbelievably good. It reminds me of the Wii Shop theme on the Nintendo Wii, and another, a lot of the Danganronpa OSTs of when you're just having downtime or you're in analytical mode. So it actually just really kind of sets the tone perfectly for what you should be doing as a viewer, which is trying to understand all this information. I 100% understand that people are not going to love the episode because it's not the shonen part of the shonen story. But all that being said, the visuals, I can't get over how good they are, right? Sure, I had trouble reading through them and fully understanding what's going on, but that's mainly down to my dyslexia and not being able to read Japanese. I personally loved it, and I'm really looking forward to what's coming next.